Well, hello everybody and welcome to another video. Now we are approaching the end of 2021, so I thought I would ask the question, do you feel as a photographer that you've been out enough with your camera this year? Because I know FOMO, which is fear of missing out, is a big deal with landscape photographers. I suffer a lot with it myself and I know other photographers do too. And often I can feel guilty for not going out with my camera, almost like I'm not quite trying hard enough. So I'm going to try and answer the question, how many times should you be going out of your camera in a year and how many images should you be taking? Of course, I can't answer that question, right? There are so many variables, everything is so subjective. But what I can do is dive into my own data and see how many times did I go out with my camera in 2021? How many images did I capture in 2021, and how many of those images are actually any good, with that last bit being very subjective to myself. So without further ado, we're going to dive into Lightroom and see if we can answer some of those questions. Now bear in mind, I'm a full-time landscape photographer, so you would think that I'm out every day shooting. Well, the results might surprise you. So I've got Lightroom here and I've applied a few filters so we can look at how many images and basically look at all of the data. Now, in 2021, in Lightroom, there are 1,094 images. Now, what we need to bear in mind is I'm talking about landscape photography. Not every image in my Lightroom catalog is a landscape image. For example, I sometimes photograph some thumbnails and some commissions here. I worked on a film with Alex Garland and there are some test images in here that I was sending to him. So anything that's not relevant to landscape photography, I've labeled as red. And as well as those red images, I'm also deducting images that are for panoramas. So when you shoot a panorama, you shoot about anywhere from 5 to 10 images and stitch them together, getting rid of them. So when you deduct the panoramas and the non-landscape images, we can have a total of 796 images. Now that's in Lightroom. I also shot with the Phase 1 camera, which only works in Capture One, and with that camera there are 105 images. So total images captured in 2021 is 796, add 105, which is 901. I think. Now, there is a bit of an asterisk with that number in that with the film, I don't always scan every single image that I take. So we could probably add on about another, I don't know, let's be generous. Let's say 50 images. Let's round it up to 950 images for those film shots that I took but didn't scan. So how many of those 950 images were actually any good? And when I say any good, I mean worth processing and possibly ending up in a YouTube video or on my Instagram feed or my website. Well, any image that does have potential, I give a rating of 3 stars. So if it gets 3 stars, then it's ready to go, it's being processed, and it may be used for display. And I can tell you, of those 950 images, 146 have 3 stars, and that includes my Phase 1 images. So that's about 950 exposures whittled down to 146 images that I think are good, and that's in 1 year. Now here's the most interesting statistic. How many days in 2021 did I actually go out with my camera and enjoy photography? Well, I can tell you, 65. 65 days in 2021 I went out with my camera. So 65 days resulted in 146 images worth processing. So if I average those 65 days in the field throughout the year, that's me going out with my camera once every 5.6 days. Now if we take those 950 exposures and divide it by 65, that's 14 exposures per day. But that doesn't mean 14 images per day. An exposure just means I've pressed the shutter. Quite often I'll take the exact same image twice just to check focus or if the light's changing, sometimes 2 or 3 times. So we can take the average of 14 exposures per day in the field and we can bring that down to 2.24 images of worth from every day's shoot in the field. But here's the question. How many keepers, how many portfolio-worthy images do we get from a year? How many portfolio-worth images do we average per shoot? And how many days, on average, do I need to go out with my camera to capture one 4-star portfolio-worth image? Of course, this is all so subjective because it's only me who decides what is portfolio worthy, and it changes. Constantly it changes. Sometimes images will be added to my 4-star list and sometimes they'll be taken away. But as it stands at the end of 2021, from a year's worth of shooting, 65 days in the field, 950 exposures, what did I say? 146 images of worth. How many of those are portfolio worthy? Well, I can tell you, 19. 19 images I have rated at 4 stars. Now, some of these you won't have actually seen yet because they're, coming out in future videos. But 19 images. So if we think about that, we went out 65 days in a year. So for me personally, a full-time landscape photographer, it takes me on average 3 and a bit days in the field to capture one portfolio worthy images. That's 19 images over 65 days in the field. Now, could I up that by going out more? Maybe instead of 65 days a year going out, I could go out 100 or 150 days in a year. I don't know, man. I worry that I would burn out. I have a lot going on, running this business with multiple arms, shipping products like my book, answering emails, editing videos, filming videos, dealing with sponsorships and various other commitments, not to mention my own personal life and family life. So I'm not entirely sure that I could beat 65 days in a year, but it does go to show that you don't necessarily need to be going out every single day to get yourself a good portfolio. It's more about choosing the optimal times to go out with your camera when the weather's looking promising. And I appreciate that not everybody has that flexibility. So I suppose the advantage that I have over part-time landscape photographers as a full-time landscape photographer isn't necessarily that I can go out all of the time. It's more so that I can be very selective about where and when I go out. So, Ansel Adams, not a million miles off. He says 12 images per year is a good crop. Bear in mind that was a long time ago. He was shooting film, which is a very, very slow, arduous process. So if we kind of take that figure and bring it into the 21st century, 19 images, I don't know. I'll see if I can improve on these numbers next year. So, until then, bye for now.